Hello friends, sci-fi you want to watch super hit movie The Blind Side in English? Then you must like this video if you are visiting our channel for the first time. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel friends. In today's video. The movie we're going to talk about is called The Blind Side. We will talk about what this movie is and where you can watch it, all the interesting facts about this movie in today's video. I am going to tell you, I also going to give you all the information on which OTT platform or on which satellite channel you will get to watch this movie. Also, we will talk in detail about the technical department, music department, pre-production filming, post-production budget, box office collection of this film. We will also talk about the story of this film, and I will also give you a small review of the story of this film. Apart from this, we will discuss about the facts of this film's storyline, star cast, actors' performance in the film, and which character has played which role. That's why I request you friends to watch this video till the end, so let's start the video. The Blind Side is a 2009 American biographical sports drama film written and directed by John Lee Hancock. Based on the 2006 book of the same name by Michael Lewis, the film tells the story of Michael Oher, a football offensive lineman who overcame an impoverished upbringing to play in the National Football League, NFL, with the help of Leigh Ann and Sean Tuohy. It stars Sandra Bullock as Leigh Ann, Tim McGraw as Sean, and Quinton as Oher. The film was a commercial success, grossing $309 million on a $29 million budget. Despite mixed reviews from critics, Bullock's performance was universally praised, leading to her winning the Academy Award for Best Actress, the Golden Globe Award for Best Actress in a Motion Picture Drama, and the Screen Actors Guild Award for Outstanding Performance by a Female Actor in a Leading Role. The film was the subject of controversy in 2023 when Oher alleged the Tuohys tricked him into signing a conservatorship agreement instead of legally adopting him, which prevented him from receiving royalties while the family indirectly made millions. Plot: 17-year-old Michael Big Mike Oher has been in foster care with different families in Tennessee due to his biological mother's drug addiction, but every time he is placed in a new home, he runs back to her. His friend's father, on whose couch Michael has been sleeping, asks Bert Cotton, the football coach of Wingate Christian School, to help get his son and Michael enrolled. Impressed by Mike's size and athleticism, Cotton gets him admitted despite his poor academic record. Michael is befriended by a younger student named Sean Tuohy Jr., SJ. SJ's mother, Leigh Ann, is a strong-minded interior designer and the wife of wealthy businessman Sean Sr. The school staff tells Michael that his father has died, apparently due to an accident. Later, Leigh Ann and Sean watch their daughter Collins playing volleyball. After the game, Sean notices Michael picking up food discarded on the bleachers. On the eve of Thanksgiving, Leigh Ann notices Michael walking alone on the road, shivering in the cold without adequate clothing. When she learns that he plans to spend the night huddled outside the closed school gym, Leigh Ann offers to let him sleep on the couch in the Tuohy home. The next morning, Leigh Ann notices that Michael has left. Seeing him walking away, she asks him to spend the Thanksgiving holiday with her family. Later, Leigh Ann drives Michael to his biological mother's house. He sees an eviction notice posted on the door, indicating that his mother is gone. Slowly, Michael becomes a member of the Tuohy family. Leigh Ann's friends question this and suggest that Collins might not be safe around him, but Leigh Ann criticizes them. She later asks Collins how she feels about it. Collins replies that they cannot just throw Michael out. When Leigh Ann seeks to become Michael's legal guardian, she learns he was taken from his drug addict mother when he was 7 and that no one knows her whereabouts. She is also told that, although he scored poorly in a career aptitude test, he ranked in the 98th percentile in protective instincts. Michael eventually improves his grades enough that he can play football at school. However, Michael appears to be hesitant to use his strength and size while practicing. Leigh Ann tells him, as an offensive lineman, he must protect his quarterback. From that moment, Michael improves dramatically, well enough to play at the college level. However, to do that, he must meet the minimum grade point average to get in, so the Tuohys hire a private tutor for him. The outspoken and kind Miss Sue. Leigh Ann has a face-to-face conversation with Michael's mother Denise about adopting him. Although she seems unresponsive in the beginning, Denise finally wishes Michael the best. Michael is heavily recruited by many prestigious schools. SJ talks to coaches and negotiates on both Michael's behalf and his own. When Michael gets his grades high enough, he decides to attend the University of Mississippi, known colloquially as Ole Miss. But as Ole Miss was where Sean Sr. had played basketball, Leanne had been a cheerleader, and Miss Sue had been as well. NCAA investigator Granger is tasked to look into the matter to determine if the two OEs took him in and unduly influenced him just so he would play for their alma mater. Michael runs away before the interview is over and confronts Leanne about her motives for taking him in. He then proceeds to find his biological mother Denise in Hurt Village. A gang leader welcomes him back, offers him a beer, and makes sexually offensive insinuations about Leanne and Collins. When Michael gets angry, the gang leader threatens to go after them, and as a result, Michael battles with him and others. After thinking things over and questioning Leanne, Michael tells Granger he chose Ole Miss because it's where my family goes to school. Michael is accepted into college and says his farewells to the Tuohy family. The film ends with information about and photos of the real Tuohy family and Michael Oher. He was drafted by the Baltimore Ravens in the first round of the 2009 NFL Draft and played in the National Football League. Cast: Sandra Bullock as Leanne Tuohy, Michael's adoptive mother. Tim McGraw as Sean Tuohy, Michael's adoptive father. Quinton Aaron as Michael Oher. Brandon Rivers as young Mike. Kathy Bates as Miss Sue. Jay Head as Sean SJ2 Jr., Michael's adoptive younger brother. Lily Collins as Collins Tuohy, Michael's adoptive younger sister. Ray McKinnon as Coach Cotton. Kim Dickens as Mrs. Boswell. Adrienne Lennox as Denise Oher, Michael's biological mother. Irony Singleton as Alton, a gang leader drug dealer. Sharon Conley as Investigator Granger. Several NCAA Division I football bowl subdivision coaches and recruiters make brief appearances as themselves. Philip Fulmer, Lou Holtz, Tom Lemming, Houston Nutt, Ed Orgeron, Pepper Rogers, Nick Saban, and Tommy Tuberville. Oher's coach from high school, Hugh Freeze, has an uncredited cameo as a coach watching game film. Production: The Blind Side was produced by Alcon Entertainment and released by Warner Bros. The film's production budget was $29 million. Filming for the school scenes took place at Atlanta International School and the Westminster Schools in Atlanta, Georgia, and it features many of their students as extras, including the now famous Taylor Ole T. Fisher. The film premiered on November 17th in New York City and New Orleans, and opened in theaters in the rest of the United States and in Canada on November 20th. Academy Award winner Julia Roberts was originally offered Bullock's role, but turned it down. Bullock initially turned down the starring role 3 times due to discomfort with portraying a devout Christian. By her own account, Bullock felt she could not objectively represent such a person's beliefs on screen. But after a visit with the real Leanne Tuohy, Bullock not only won the role, but also took a pay cut and agreed to receive a percentage of the profits instead. Reception. Box office. The Blind Side opened in second place behind the Twilight Saga New Moon, earning $34.5 million during its opening weekend. It was the highest-grossing opening weekend of Sandra Bullock's career. The movie enjoyed a rare greater success for the second weekend, taking in an estimated $40 million, ranking again in second place to New Moon. During its third weekend, The Blind Side moved up to first place, earning $20.4 million due to strong word of mouth. In its fourth weekend, it moved down to second place, earning an estimated $15.5 million. By January 2010, the film had earned $200 million domestically, becoming an all-time career high for an actress whose sole name appears above the title. By June 2010, the film ended its domestic theatrical run, earning a total of nearly $256 million. In the United Kingdom and Ireland, the film was released on March 26, 2010. It was the third biggest release of that weekend, behind Nanny McPhee and The Big Bang and Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland. The Blind Side has also become the highest-grossing football film and sports drama of all time domestically, unadjusted for ticket inflation. Critical response. Sandra Bullock's performance in The Blind Side received enormous critical praise. Review aggregation website Rotten Tomatoes gives the film a rating of 66%, based on 203 reviews, with an average rating of 6.110. The site's critical consensus reads, "It might strike some viewers as a little too pat, but The Blind Side has the benefit of strong source material and a strong performance from Sandra Bullock." Metacritic, which assigned a score of 53 out of 100 based on reviews from 29 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film a rare A+ grade. A.O. Scott of the New York Times commented on the performances. "Ms. Bullock is convincing enough as an energetic, multitasking woman of the New South who knows her own mind and usually gets her own way." And Tim McGraw as Leanne's affable husband, Sean, inhabits his character comfortably and knows how to get out of Ms. Bullock's way when necessary. He found the movie to be made up almost entirely of turning points and yet curiously devoid of drama or suspense, and called it a live-action, reality-based version of a Disney cartoon. It's the heartwarming tale of a foundling taken in by strangers who accept him even though he's different and treat him as one of their own. According to Michael Rechtshafen of The Hollywood Reporter, Bullock's character is an irrepressible hoot in writer-director John Lee Hancock's otherwise thoroughly conventional take on Michael Lewis' fact-based book. In spite of her feisty and energetic performance, he felt that there was a lack of development concerning Michael's character. Not until the end of the film do we ever get a chance to really see what's going on in Oher's head, how he feels about being the chosen one plucked from the poverty-stricken projects of Memphis and thrown into this protected, non-liberal-leaning environment of privilege. Peter Bradshaw of The Guardian described Bullock's appearance as strangely humorless and felt that there is something weirdly absent about this performance. Overall, he opined that the film provided a photoshopped image of reality that is bland, parochial, and stereotypically acted, and concluded, "There is a rich, complex story to be told about Michael Oher and his mentor, Leanne Toohey, but this waxwork parade isn't it." Race relations. The film has been criticized for perpetuating the white savior trope. Jeffrey Montez de Oca of the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs, writes that in The Blind Side's portrayal of adoption, charity operates as a signifying act of whiteness that obscures the social relations of domination that not only make charity possible, but also creates an urban underclass in need of charity. Melissa Anderson of the Dallas Observer argues that the mute, docile portrayal of Oher effectively endorses the Uncle Tom stereotype of African American submission to white authority. In her book, White Fragility, Robin DiAngelo criticized The Blind Side's perpetuation of negative racial stereotypes, calling it fundamentally and insidiously anti-black. She refers to a scene in which Oher returns to his stereotypically violent former neighborhood, only leaving when Toohey rescues him from it. She also argues that the film portrays Oher as a simpleton who uses instinct over intellect, as a psychological test concludes that Oher has little ability to learn, but much protective instinct, a scientifically nonsensical statement, according to DiAngelo. Michael Oher has also voiced his displeasure with the movie and takes particular exception to its portrayal of his intelligence. In his 2012 book, I Beat the Odds, From Homelessness to The Blind Side and Beyond, Oher wrote, "I felt like the movie portrayed me as dumb instead of as a kid who had never had consistent academic instruction and ended up thriving once he got it." The film's claim that he didn't understand football was another point of irritation for Oher. When talking about watching his adoptive family teach him, he said, "No, that's not me at all. I've been studying, really studying, the game since I was a kid." Despite his displeasure with his portrayal in the movie, Oher has stated that he likes the film's message of perseverance and the general treatment of the Toohey family, and has been quoted as saying, "It's a great story. It seems like they helped me to get to this point. They're my family, and without them, I wouldn't be here. And they taught me a lot of things, showed me a lot of different things. It shows that if you help somebody and give somebody a chance and don't judge people, look where they can get to." Best Picture nomination. The nomination of The Blind Side for Best Picture was considered a surprise, even to its producers. In an attempt to revitalize interest, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences had upped the number of Best Picture nominees from a mandatory number of 5 to 10 in time for the 82nd Academy Awards. the year The Blind Side was nominated. However, in 2011, the Academy changed the policy, stating that the Best Picture category would feature from 5 to 10 nominees, depending on voting results, as opposed to a set number of nominees. The change was interpreted as a response to films like The Blind Side being nominated for Best Picture to fill up the set number of spots. Soundtrack. The film features 23 songs by artists including Les Paul, Young MC, Lucy Woodward, The Books, Canned Heat, Five for Fighting, and the film's co-star Tim McGraw. However, when the score soundtrack by Carter Burwell was released on CD, none of the featured songs were included. Release. Home media. The Blind Side was released on DVD and Blu-ray on March 23, 2010. It was available exclusively for rental from Blockbuster for 28 days. Redbox and Netflix customers had to wait 28 days before they were able to rent the movie. 60. This stems from the settlement of a lawsuit brought by Redbox against Warner Home Video, who, in an attempt to boost DVD sales, refused to sell wholesale titles to Redbox. On August 19, 2009, Redbox sued Warner Home Video 61 to continue purchasing DVD titles at wholesale prices. On February 16, 2010, Redbox settled the lawsuit and agreed to a 28-day window past the street date. As of July 9, 2013, units sold for the DVD stand at more than 8.4 million copies, and it has grossed a further $107,962, adding to its total gross. The Blu-ray was reissued as part of the Best of Warner Bros. 50 film collection in 2013. There was also a release of this limited edition set issued on DVD. Legal claim against Tuohy family. In August 2023, Oher filed a lawsuit alleging that Leanne and Sean Tuohy never actually adopted him, but instead created a conservatorship which gave them legal authority to make business deals in his name. He alleged that the Tuohys used their power as conservators to strike a deal that paid them and their two children millions of dollars in royalties from the Blind Side movie, while Oher received nothing. S.J. Tuohy, the biological son of the Tuohy family, claims to have received $60–70 grand over the course of the last 4 or 5 years. The producers of The Blind Side, Broderick Johnson and Andrew Kosove, denied the Tuohys were paid millions, claiming the family was paid $700,000 after taxes. In addition to the contractual payments, their company Alcon Entertainment made a charitable contribution to the Tuohy Family Foundation and offered to donate an equal amount to a charity of Oher's choosing, which he declined. Author Michael Lewis also denied millions were made, claiming 20th Century Fox paid $250,000 for the option to make the movie, split 50-50 with the Tuohy family, with Oher declining his royalty checks, adding they showered him with resources and love. That he's suspicious of them is breathtaking. The state of mind one has to be in to do that. I feel sad for him. In August 2024, the New York Times Magazine criticized Lewis for attributing Oher's lawsuit to CTE without evidence and promoting a white savior narrative, despite Oher already achieving high school football success before the Tuohys began their conservatorship. Oher's legal action asked the court to end the Tuohys' conservatorship and issue an injunction barring them from using his name and likeness or referring to themselves as his adopted family. It also asked for a full accounting of the money the Tuohys earned using Oher's name to be paid his share of profits and other compensatory and punitive damages. The lawyer representing the Tuohys released a statement regarding Oher's remarks, describing them as hurtful and absurd, and alleging that Oher had threatened to plant a negative story about them in the press unless they paid him $15 million. The biggest for me was being portrayed as not being able to read or write. When you go into a locker room and your teammates don't think you can learn a playbook, that weighs heavy. Michael Oher. On September 29th, the judge terminated the conservatorship, which the Tuohys had said they were happy to end. The Tuohys also later told the court they would remove all mentions to Oher being adopted from their website and public speaking advertisements. Soon Michael is taking to the football field, and after a wobbly start is a natural and definite college sports scholarship material. But wait, like all the Tuohy family, Leanne loves football. Could it be that she was grooming Michael as a mouth-watering gift to her football-crazy alma mater, the University of Mississippi, a big part of her social status and the place where she undoubtedly hopes to send her own kids? And if she was, what on earth is so bad about that? Everyone wins, don't they? Aren't conservatives allowed to show compassion? Especially as Leanne's compassion, unlike that of whinging liberals, actually gets things done? That is the only real dramatic issue at stake, the only question that might smudge the family Christmas card perfection of this story. The movie fudges it. It is raised perfunctorily, only at the very end. The rest of the action is taken up with predictable, hammily acted nonsense. There is a rich, complex story to be told about Michael Oher and his mentor, Leanne Tuohy, but this waxwork parade isn't it. 2 weeks after Precious opened to blockbuster grosses, along comes The Blind Side, another life struggle chronicle centering on an uncommunicative, smart but stunted 300-pound African-American teenager who overcomes enormous familial and social problems with the help of outsiders. Like Precious, The Blind Side features a domineering matriarch played by an actress who's being touted as an Oscar contender, a well-known singer giving a persuasive performance in a supporting role, a concerned teacher going beyond the call of duty, and a couple of supportive comic relief buddies. Unlike the tale told in Precious, however, The Blind Side story is contrived, storybook sweet, credulity straining, and, true. It's based not on a novel, but on Michael Lewis's fact-based football book, The Blind Side, Evolution of a Game, roughly half of which is devoted to the rise of Michael Oher from impoverished circumstances in Memphis 10 to college stardom at the University of Mississippi. An end credit sequence brings the story up to date. Oher was a first-round 2009 NFL draft pick for the Baltimore Ravens, where he currently plays right tackle. Near the start of the film, when feisty Memphis belle Leanne Tuohy, Sandra Bullock, sees 16-year-old Big Mike, Quinton wandering aimlessly in the rain after a function at the private Christian school her kids attend, she intuits that something's amiss. Her kids confirm that Big Mike attends the school, but he's essentially homeless, and when it becomes clear that he's got nowhere to spend the night, she invites him to bed down on a couch in her family's palatial manse. The next morning, he gets up before the rest of the household, folds the sheets neatly, and heads down the tree-lined driveway. But Leanne, who's something of a good cause force of nature, is not about to let him go back to wandering the streets. Instead, with the none-too-veiled racism of her affluent friends ringing in her ears, she's soon buying him clothes, installing him in his own bedroom, and hiring a tutor to get his grades to a level where he can play football, a sport at which she and everyone else assumes, given Big Mike's enormous size, he'll be a natural. Not so much as it happens. But that just means that pint-sized 10-year-old Tuohy son S.J. J. Head can set himself up as amateur coach and get the family's newly recruited gentle giant into shape as mom works to make him more aggressive. While Aaron comes across pleasantly enough as a reluctant jock, his Big Mike is almost incidental to a story that's framed less around him than around the family that adopts him, literally, and pushes him to succeed. The Blind Side is chiefly tailored as a vehicle for Bullock, whose hard-charging Leanne is shown off, admired, and allowed to walk off with almost every scene. At once irrepressibly sunny and pushy enough to seem a royal pain, and so fiercely implacable in defense of her young ward that you entirely understand why everyone from drug dealers to football coaches to country club matrons would back down in her presence. She's the reason the story remains as engaging as it does on screen. Lest she seem too much of a pill, she's met everywhere by smiles, smiles, and more smiles. Country music star Tim McGraw is fine as Leanne's affably acquiescent hubby, as is Ray McKinnon as an affably flustered football coach. Kathy Bates' affably liberal good old girl tutor has her moments, especially one in which she admits to being a closet Democrat. And Adrienne Lennox makes a quick impression as Big Mike's neglectful but loving mom, one of the few characters depicted as not having much reason to be relentlessly upbeat. John Lee Hancock's julep-sweet screenplay pretty much turns the book's measured account of Oher's story into a feel-good fantasy for white liberals. The film doesn't spend much time delving into big-picture questions, and its content to trade in stereotypes when the camera wanders to the less affluent side of the Tennessee tracks. But as ever in Hollywood, the based on a true story defense will probably provide a certain amount of cover. Hancock's only aiming for a crowd pleaser, and by not challenging the established playbook for inspirational sports dramas, he's no doubt got one. It's hard to be totally objective about a movie based on a true story that occurred in the city where I live. A few days after it opened, a parishioner told me that I had to see The Blind Side because it does Memphis proud. That's a pretty good recommendation for a much maligned city. Happily, there are many good things to be said about this true story of a wealthy suburban Memphis family, Lee Ann and Sean Tuohy, their daughter Collins, and son S.J., Sean Jr. One cold night, they see an African-American teenager, Michael Big Mike Oher, walking along a road without a coat or umbrella in the pouring rain. Lee Ann recognizes him as a student, apparently the only black student, at the private Christian school her children attend. Michael seems to have nowhere to go, so Lee Ann brings him home and lets him sleep on the couch. After determining that Michael has no family, he was taken away from his drug-addicted mother, the Tuohys invite him to stay with him temporarily. Eventually, they become his legal guardians. I imagine the producers of The Blind Side hoped it would be a modest success. However, the film has surprised everyone by becoming a major hit. It's good to know that there is still an audience for an appealing real-life story without multi-million dollars worth of special effects or comic book superheroes. Let's hope it starts a trend. Blind Side. The Blind Side focuses on the character of Lee Ann, a strong, no-nonsense Southern woman who knows what she wants and usually gets it. Sandra Bullock gives a fine performance as Lee Ann. Not unlike Julia Roberts playing a similar real-life character in Erin Brockovich, Bullock storms into rooms and even football practice sessions with high heels, tight skirts, and low-cut tops. Lee Ann is not easily intimidated. When she decides to bring Michael into her family, no one else, including her prejudiced friends, can change her mind. Michael is very large and very quiet, revealing little about himself and his past. While this characterization of Michael may indeed be valid, it makes him a difficult character for the viewer to empathize with. In later scenes in which Michael is interviewed by major college football coaches, several SEC coaches play themselves in cameo roles, S.J. in effect becomes Michael's agent, negotiating with the coaches. The scenes are cute, but seem uncomfortably demeaning to Michael. Curiously, the real Michael Oher has refused to comment on the film. In the movie, as in real life, Michael does learn to become a football player at school, then goes on to be a college star at Ole Miss, and finally a successful NFL player. It's a good inspirational movie about a family who takes a chance on a homeless youth from another race and raises him as their own. But it falls short of being a great movie. The characters all seem one-dimensional. Lee Ann says to her friends that Michael is changing her life. But do we see any change? Lee Ann seems exactly the same at the end of the movie as she did in her first scene. Michael never reveals himself. Sean is nice and easygoing, and the kids are cute. Perhaps the characters in the film are accurately portrayed. However, the movie would have been stronger if the characters had more depth. Despite its weaknesses, The Blind Side is still worth seeing. The Tuohys are an evangelical Christian family who reach out to Michael in a way beyond all expectations because of their evangelical Christian faith. Millions of moviegoers have flocked to theaters to see their inspirational story. May this modern-day parable inspire others to go and do likewise. Watching The Blind Side is like watching your favorite football team. You'll cheer when things go well, curse when they don't, and be reminded that in football, as in life, it's how you play the game that counts. Though winning doesn't hurt either. I'm talking to the jocks here. The rest of you can just bring Kleenex and give in to this quintessentially old-style story that is high on hope, low on cynicism, and long on heart. If Frank Capra was still around, director John Lee Hancock might have had to fight him for the job. Based on the remarkable true story of Baltimore Ravens tackle Michael Oher, once a homeless black Memphis teenager literally plucked off the road on an icy winter night by a well-heeled white family, the movie stars Sandra Bullock as Lee Ann Tuohy. She's a spitfire of a mom, and it's the kind of smart, sassy role Hollywood should have given the actress ages ago. Michael's story begins in a Memphis project aptly named Hurt Village, with a drug-addicted mother, an absentee father, and a childhood in and out of foster homes, all of which we get compressed into a few quick flashbacks scattered through the film. It's what became of Michael, newcomer Quinton that the film is concerned with, and that is framed by something else entirely: the Tuohy family and Washington Redskins quarterback Joe Theismann's career-ending injury in 1985 after a blindside tackle by New York Giants linebacker Lawrence Taylor. The film opens, as does the Michael Lewis book on which it is based, with a breakdown of the 4 seconds from the snap of the ball to the snap of Theismann's leg that would change the game, with Bullock narrating the still difficult-to-see footage from that night. Theismann has said even he can't watch it. Michael, it turns out, will have the weight, size, and speed to block the Lawrence Taylors of the world, an increasingly valuable commodity in the football world. And that's where the Tuohys come in. As a football-obsessed family, they nurture his raw talent. As fundamental Christians, they keep an eye on his soul. Lee Ann is a force of nature in a Chanel suit, armed with a cell phone and a .22. In the role, Bullock blows in like a tornado, issuing orders in a rapid-fire southern drawl that defies speed and ruffles more than a few feathers. It's not her fault. She just knows she's right and won't stop until everyone else is on the same page. And believe me, Bullock makes join rather than fight the option you want to take. She nails the character with every click, click, click of her heels and every toss of those perfectly coiffed blonde locks. When she stares down a drug dealer while she assures him her Saturday night special works just fine on all the other days of the week, you feel like ducking too. The rest of the clan is made up of husband Sean, played with an easygoing charm by country singer Tim McGraw, teenage daughter Collins, Lily Collins, and young son S.J., with Jay Head pulling off such a perfect mix of Leanne's cockiness and Sean's charisma that you miss him when he's not around. Michael ends up enrolled in the private Christian school where the Tuohy kids go. His size and agility had caught the coach's eye, and he's accepted despite having a grade point average that barely registers. That fateful freezing night when Leanne takes him home comes soon after, and almost overnight he is being absorbed into the family, which has not only an open heart and an open mind, but a serious obsession with football, Ole Miss in particular. What happens next is a testament to the unique people that both Leanne and Michael are. As she begins to piece together the depressing backstory of his life, he begins to trust that she will be there for him. These are emotional colors not easy to get to, but they happen here in moving ways because of the chemistry between Bullock and Aaron. She infuses the role with empathy, not pity. He brings an aching vulnerability and an innocence that are remarkable for someone with no formal training. You know going in that this is a success story, but it still is deeply satisfying to see Michael's life unfold. He becomes a decent student in large part thanks to the help of his tutor, Miss Sue, Kathy Bates, another Ole Miss alum. He's a bull on the field, and eventually the object of a college ball recruitment drive so extensive that the NCAA investigates. No one can quite believe the Tuohys would take him in with no ulterior motive, particularly after he chooses to go to Ole Miss. After the fiasco of The Alamo, Hancock is solidly back in his wheelhouse with another compelling sports story that echoes the human touch he brought to the 2002 sleeper hit, The Rookie. In The Blind Side, he's pared much of the football analysis of the book away to keep the focus on the family. But one of the great treats of the film is the parade of real-life coaches, including such legends as Lou Holtz and Nick Saban, that come to recruit Michael. And there should be enough on-field action to get even the tough guys in the audience through the more emotional moments. Wisely, Hancock has given the film as much humor as heart, whether it's Michael bench-pressing S.J. or Leanne calling in plays to a very irritated high school coach. By the time Sean points out the irony that they ended up having a black son before they had even met a Democrat, Miss Sue, you've long since accepted that there is nothing predictable about this story. But in the end, this is Bullock's movie. She is Lee Ann to such a degree you forget you're watching one of the best-known actresses around. And while her sass is both endearing and highly entertaining, it is the way she masks Lee Ann's never let them see you cry vulnerability, especially when it comes to Michael. The quick retreats when she's moved, shoulder thrown back, eyes staring straight ahead as she hands out the latest set of marching orders. That leave you cheering for her too. There's a certain time of year when I attend the cinemas on a very frequent basis. This time in Australia is usually the summer period. However, I am not usually frequenting the cinema to see the summer blockbuster releases, like the good majority of cinema patrons. A summer cinema release does not mean a summer blockbuster to me, but instead equates to an Academy Award contender. In this time, I pretty much see any film that is a surefire flick to be nominated for an Academy Award. This surge in cinema viewing that occurs across the world can be seen as one of the huge upsides to the very controversial award-giving group that is synonymous with shaky and questionable choices. Leading up to the Academy Awards, I became aware of an advanced screening of John Lee Hancock's The Blind Side, a football family drama about a Southern family who takes in a disadvantaged black youth and aid him along with love, support, and encouragement all the way to the NFL. This is not the usual type of film that I attend. The family-friendly, feel-good, you can do anything if you have love story does not usually appear on my radar, let alone a sports film in general. However, The Blind Side had a leg up being nominated for the Best Picture Oscar, and having its star, Sandra Bullock, as the frontrunner to win the Best Actress prize. So with this reason in tow, I sped off to see it in its advanced release, and boy did it surprise me. Set in Memphis, Sean and Lee Ann Tuohy, played by Tim McGraw and Bullock, discover Michael Oher, Quinton Aaron, walking in the rain one night with a dirty shirt in his plastic bag as his only possession and nowhere to stay. You can pretty much guess what happens from here on end. The usual conflicts and resolutions follow in a very neat order, which is to be expected of a Hollywood-produced film with a Hollywood superstar as its leading attraction. And yet, somehow, I found myself continually smiling and wanting to burst out into applause for many different reasons. Most importantly, there is an interesting representation of race. The last year in cinema has seen two different and interesting portrayals of disadvantaged black youths. In Lee Daniels' Precious, we see a physically and sexually abused, illiterate, and overweight 16-year-old girl who is pregnant with her second baby from her father. Aided by her teacher, she manages to break through and discover, above all else, the power of love. A.O. Scott sees similarities within The Blind Side. In an article he wrote a few months ago in the New York Times, Scott notes that both films portray a disadvantaged youth overcoming their obstacles with the help of teachers in Precious and a rich Southern white-skinned family in The Blind Side. The message that seems to be reiterated in the final moments of The Blind Side is that without this aid, these kids would just be another causality in a poor, disadvantaged ghetto life. Critiques of Precious see it as further perpetuating a negative stereotype of the African American race as impoverished, illiterate, and incestuous, whereas The Blind Side has had the issue of white guilt at its helm. Race is dealt more delicately in The Blind Side, and at the same time propelling an idea of a fairy tale savior through the guise of a wealthy white family. After seeing these two films within a week, I strongly disagree that either one perpetuates any negative racial stereotypes. It is true that The Blind Side has its problems, and indeed the literal white knight image can be very problematic. However, this is an issue that is superfluous from the film's core. Ultimately, the film's message is the overcoming adversity through the support of well-wishing and benevolent forces. This is not a falsified notion either, as both of these films are based on true stories, with The Blind Side being explicitly based on the story of Michael Oher, and Precious being based upon an amalgamation of many girls like the main character, written by Sapphire, a pseudonym for Ramona Lofton, teaching in the projects of Harlem. Being made for a marginally modest Hollywood budget of $27 million, The Blind Side has received impressive box office takings. In its opening weekend, it came second only to New Moon, raking in $34 million. However, in its second weekend, the film took in unlikely $40 million. The Blind Side has also been the first film to make over $200 million, with having a female name receiving sole top billing over the film. The film has been Bullock's most successful box office draw and has drowned her in awards from the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, the Golden Globes, Critics' Choice, Screen Actors Guild, and what I predict, although an easy prediction to make, to be an Academy Award. The Blind Side is rounded off with very good performances by Aaron, McGraw, Kathy Bates, and Ariane Lennox, who plays Michael's drug-addicted mother, and who in real life won a Tony Award for her portrayal of Mrs. Muller in the original Broadway production of John Patrick Shanley's Doubt. Hollywood with a capital, brightly lit up H, The Blind Side is a cliché-filled film. However, it still succeeds in presenting all the necessarily elements of a successful family sports drama. Narrative was simple and linear, the plot propelled action along swiftly, and the performances were extremely decent. It is a great story that left me with a warm feeling. Maybe I'm just ignorant and impressionable, but not everything has to be cynically picked away to demean a simple film's strong and positive message. Contemptible people often mean well. I thought this while watching The Blind Side, not just about the film's characters, but about both the filmmakers and the film's target audience. The movie tells the true story of Michael Big Mike Oher, Quinton Aaron, an overweight black teen plucked from the Mississippi projects into a Catholic prep school to become a football star. An early scene of the coach watching Oher on a basketball court, mouth agog, is followed by the coach telling the school's admissions board that it's their duty to give downtrodden kids like Oher a chance. Otherwise, he says, they might as well take the word Christian right out of the school's name. Yet the youth eventually excels as a left tackle, and at film's end, he's going on to star at Ole Miss. Indeed, a major reason for the movie's existence is that Oher now plays for the Baltimore Ravens. For all the huff and guff about escaping the projects and getting his grades up, the movie's most invested in the kid when he literally kicks ass. Blind Side presents Michael as a sad-eyed suckling dove off the field, and for the first hour or so, he barely speaks at all. The movie isn't even his story, really, but rather that of his wealthy eventual adopted mothers, Leanne Twohy, Sandra Bullock. Her decision to take him home kicks the plot into motion. Her choices to buy him clothes and a bed fuel the first act. Her teaching him how to play football creates the second act. And first, her legally adopting him, then her convincing him to attend her alma mater, propel the third. Is this some sort of white guilt thing? One of Leanne's lunch friends asks, the woman's vapidity emphasized with an $18 salad. Leanne flatly says no. Honey, you're changing that boy's life, another friend tells her. No, Leanne responds, he's changing mine. And so, surprisingly, perhaps even shockingly, I am left to admit that The Blind Side is more than just a solid piece of well-acted, inspirational entertainment. It's quite possibly one of the best movies of the year. Make no mistake, on some levels, this true story is exactly what you think it is. The son of a drug addict, the hulking, oversized frame that is Michael Oher begins the film living on the couch of a janitor for an upper-class prep school with a mid-level football team. The janitor is able to convince the school's coach to pressure the faculty to accept Michael in the hopes that he'll be eligible to play. But when the janitor's wife forces him to kick Michael out of their small apartment, Big Mike is stranded in a mostly white school without any place to live or means of supporting himself. When parents Leanne Tuffy and her husband Sean, Sandra Bullock and Tim McGraw, discover that Michael is virtually homeless, they offer him a place to stay for the night. This simple offer unexpectedly transforms into a life-changing experience that'll find the Tuffys and their children taking in Michael as a member of the family and supporting his efforts at learning the game of football. The quality of The Blind Side is 100% in the little things. Bullock offers a pitch-perfect performance as the typical Southern mother, and despite navigating her most well-written role to date, she's aided considerably by McGraw. Having played the abusive, emotionally distant football father in Friday Night Lights, McGraw plays Bullock's charmingly supportive husband with an understated charisma and utterly infectious charm. The pair feel like a genuine couple, a relationship that is cemented by the high quality of the kids' performances. Overall, The Blind Side is an excellent movie that manages to be about football without ever being a football movie. The performances are truthful, and you're left fully invested not only in Michael, but in the Tuffys in general. It really does overcome all it could have been to be a subtler, smarter film than one might expect. When I first laid eyes on the poster with a blonde Sandra Bullock and a big, black American footballer, I groaned. With a name like The Blind Side and a poster like that, I expected a sappy, saccharine melodrama in the vein of Pay It Forward and Stepmom. I was wrong. The Blind Side is a film about compassion, prejudice, family, chance, and the virtues of hard work. It tells the inspirational true story of Michael Oher, an underprivileged, albeit talented, African-American youth, and his relationship with Leanne Tuohy, a wealthy white woman from the other side of town. As per usual, I won't say much more than that. If you don't know who Michael Oher is, great. Don't look him up before seeing the movie. Two things really surprised me about The Blind Side. First, it is so much better than it should have been. The Blind Side is truly a terrific film, one that pulls at the heartstrings without trying to tear them down. It may have been a little sappy and a little melodramatic at times, but for the most part, director and screenwriter John Lee Hancock, The Rookie, The Alamo, manages to keep the film from tipping over the edge. There are numerous moments that will warm your heart, but very few that will make you cringe in discomfort. Second, Sandra Bullock is good. There, I said it. Sandra Bullock is good in The Blind Side. I may have ranted about her Oscar nomination, but I now think she is deserving. Bullock's really not that much better than she was in her other movies, but when you stick an average actress in a great film and the perfect role, anything is possible. While I don't think Bullock deserves to win, though I think she probably will, I admit I was wrong to compare her to Matthew McConaughey. That was low, even for me. There's not too much to complain about The Blind Side. The length, 128 minutes, is fine, the pacing is good, and the sporadic humor is lighthearted and in the right spirit. The only thing is that it's a little too neat and tidy. There are some very ugly issues underlying the film, but it never felt like they were properly confronted. Too sanitized, perhaps, and consequently missing that raw, emotional power. It would have been easy to dismiss The Blind Side as a white people are so wonderful movie, except that it is a true story. Romanticized, perhaps, but a true story nonetheless. That's what makes it remarkable. Every time you think things are too good to be true, you just have to remind yourself that it, or something like it, actually happened. Movies based on inspirational true stories aren't supposed to actually leave you feeling inspired, but somehow, The Blind Side does. The marketing campaign for The Blind Side plays up the inspirational aspects of the story, that it's based on the real-life rags-to-riches tale of football player Michael Oher and the woman whose fierce love and determination to help him allowed him to see the promised land. There's no doubt this is a crowd pleaser, as occasional bursts of applause attested during the screening I attended. The film skillfully plays on an audience's emotions, but that's what this sort of movie does, and director John Lee Hancock shows a sure hand when it comes to careful manipulation. He rarely goes too far, and he knows enough to leaven the heavy emotional aspects with bursts of comedy and the occasional telling point about what causes us to value individuals in this society. Michael Oher, Quinton, was selected in the first round of the 2009 NFL Draft by the Baltimore Ravens. This is a sanitized, some might argue, Hollywoodized version of events that brought him to that point. When the film begins, he's a lost teenager who has been accepted to a private religious school because of his untapped potential as a football player. The coach, Ray McKinnon, salivates when he considers Michael's size and strength on his offensive line. He's a bear of a man. But Michael's academic performance is so poor that he is ineligible to play. He has no home. The state took him away from his crack-addicted mother when he was a child, and he mostly looks for warm places to spend the night. He is wandering the streets in the cold and the rain when Leigh Anne Toohey, Sandra Bullock, spots him. She and her husband, Sean, Tim McGraw, recognize him since their son, S.J., J-Head, and daughter, Collins, Lily Collins, go to his school. Impulsively, Leigh Anne invites Michael to spend the night on her couch, and that one night becomes the first of many. Michael becomes a part of the Toohey family. His performance at school improves, and he is finally able to show what he can do on a football field. To be sure, there are some stock elements in the story, such as a scene in which Michael returns to the projects and confronts some of the gangsters who knew him as a child. But what's impressive about The Blind Side is how many of the familiar cliches are not to be found in the movie. No villain is invented to generate unnecessary conflict. There is no weepy reunion between Michael and his birth mother. There are no tortured scenes of drawn-out family bonding. The Blind Side isn't exactly subtle, but neither is it cloying. Hancock, who also directed another inspirational sports drama, The Rookie, gets the tone just about right. And while things are softened considerably for the PG-13 rating, there are hints of darker elements that don't quite make it to the screen. In a way, This is Precious for a family-friendly audience. Lee Daniels' movie is more gritty and gripping, but the core message is the same about an individual with profound disadvantages overcoming his or her disabilities and finding success in life. Both are fairy tales of a sort, and it hardly matters that one has its roots in fact and the other is based on a work of fiction. Some will doubtlessly dismiss The Blind Side as another example of a heroic white person saving a black victim, but although there is an element of truth in that perfunctory description, it misses the point. This is more about simple human decency and economic disadvantage than it is about racial inequality, although it would be disingenuous to ignore a link. Lee Ann helps Michael not because of the color of his skin or his potential as an athlete. She does it because she sees another human being suffering and reaches out to him. Others, like Coach Cotton, have ulterior motives for extending themselves. Although the central character in the real-life drama is Michael, that's not necessarily the case with the movie, in which the script strikes a balance between Michael and Lee Ann. But where relative newcomer Quinton operates a little under the radar, Sandra Bullock is anything but low-key. She is very good in this juicy role, the right mix of tough love and occasional vulnerability. There's some of the Julia Roberts vibe from Erin Brockovich here, and it would be foolish to assume the actress was unaware of the Oscar potential inherent in the part when she accepted it. Still, Bullock pulls it off, and it seems possible a nomination could be in her future. She is ably supported. Tim McGraw is likable as the supportive husband who's along for the ride. Lily Collins shows spunk as the little sister who defies peer pressure to embrace her new brother. And Jay Head provides most of the comedic relief. Aaron, meanwhile, has the physique to play Michael, and his acting is solid enough for him to be able to pull off the role of the gentle giant, but he spends a fair amount of time in Bullock's shadow. A number of college coaches have cameos. Nick Saban is probably given too much screen time. He's a truly awful actor, as becomes evident as soon as he begins reciting dialogue. The trailer makes The Blind Side out to be more mawkish than it is. Although there is some softening of the edges and amplification of the positives, the film doesn't take it to extremes or play the audience for fools. The script is generally pretty smart. It begins with a fabulous voiceover detailing how Joe Theismann's 1985 injury resulted in Michael having a shot at eventual stardom, and the characters are nicely developed. It's easy for an inspirational movie to try too hard to get viewers to cheer. This one achieves the goal by allowing the good feelings to emerge organically rather than by artificial means. In a head-to-head comparison, one would be hard-pressed not to declare that Precious is the better film. It makes fewer compromises and doesn't shy from showing the true ugliness only hinted at in this movie, but The Blind Side is more accessible. It's easier to digest. In the end, both films tell stories of triumph over adversity, a category of drama that uplifts while offering a dollop of social commentary. The Blind Side is a better and more genuinely empathetic movie than Radio and its Kent. Heart and grit, aided by appealing performances, ultimately carry the day. Bullock saunters through the film with a winning blend of toughness and tenderness, and both Aaron and McGraw are engaging in parts that could have been meteor. It's a rare depiction of a happy marriage and family, and is refreshingly candid about the Choi's Christian faith and its role in their willingness to share their lives in a brave and inspiring way. Other information about this film, Coach Cotton, Ray McKinnon, convinces board members of a small Christian private school in Memphis, Tennessee, to admit Michael, or Quinton, Aaron, a gigantic African-American from the slums of the city. He knows that the boy can't play football unless his grades are up to snuff. Lee and Shuey. Sandra Bullock is a feisty interior designer married to Shaw Tim McCall, a laid-back fast food entrepreneur, and mother to Cole. Learning that Michael is homeless, she decides to do the right thing as a believing Christian and give him a place to stay. Leanne is a charge woman who immediately goes shopping with her new guest and buys him some clothes at school. Michael is quiet and isolated from the other students, who are all white, although shy and tight-lipped. One of his teachers discovers that he is quite bright but unsure of himself. Michael just needs time living with the Choi family opens him up to new possibilities, when this gentle giant finally shows up on the football field. The coach is shocked to see that he has no killer. In little SJ takes charge of his training regimen and single-handedly tutors him in the essentials of the game. But it takes the wise counsel of Leanne to connect with Michael's nurturing instincts. She says to him, "This team is your family, and you have to protect them. Tony is your quarterback. You protect his blind side. When you look at him, think of me." Michael takes this message to heart and becomes a formidable left tackle. His aggressiveness and talent serves as a spur to the team, who suddenly become winners, but to continue in the sport, Michael has to raise his grades, and so the Callways hire him a tutor. Miss Sue Kathy Bates, she shocks these proud NRA Republicans by telling them she is a Democrat in addition to his grades. Michael faces one last hurdle to entry into big-time college football. Writer and director John Lee Hancock, the rookie, has adapted this true sports story from a book by Michael LaMichael Oher, now plays for the Baltimore Ravens. And as we see in this inspirational story of his life, the source of his transformation is the love, appreciation, support, and counsel of his adoptive mother, Lee, and Choi Sandra. Bullock carries this film with her nuanced, emotionally powerful, and compelling performance. Her experience illustrates a key spiritual lesson. Giving to others reverberates back to the giver, deepening and enriching her life. The film also challenges us redefine the meaning of family values. The Blind Side is an unabashedly feel-good movie, and it deserves a large and attentive audience. Hancock again signals to us that engaging sports stories can deliver spiritual messages that speak to all of us. The Blind Side is the true story about Baltimore Ravens right tackle Mike, or a young man who was taken in by a wealthy Christian family in Tennessee and given the chance to really do something with his life. Surprisingly, Sandra Bullock steps into the shoes as the Christian mother of the family who directly supports Michael's education. It's a much different role for Bullock, especially given the spiritual background of her character and the family. But Leonie is a tough character, and Bullock plays it strongly and with believable confidence. Quinton steps in as Michael, not having much dialogue. Through his portrayal of the sheepish character at times, Aaron's performance feels a bit forced, especially as he tries to appear self-conscious or disconnected. But for the most part, he is convincing in the Bly role. The acting, aside from Bullock, tends to range from below average to good. Country singer Tim McGraw is likable as her husband Sean, but his performance is a little inconsistent as well, for the most part. However, M. Shrey is charming in the role, and good support for Bullock's lead. The weakest spot may be the family's youngest son, S.J., played by Head, who was previously seen in Hancock, who at times looks more like he's reading from a cue card than acting in the moment. He's a cute kid who gets his job done, but he takes the quality of some of his scenes down a notch. The film is an emotional and heartwarming tale of hope and encouragement. The story portrays Christians pretty realistically and isn't preachy when it comes to the topic. Faith at all, racial issues do awkwardly come into play. But given the film's setting in the South, it's more or less to be expected. The film can be a bit melodramatic at times, too. But it's easy to get pulled into Michael's story and feel for his character's unfortunate circumstances. Content in The Blind Side is on the lighter PG-13 side. There are a few instances of the A-word DHL bitch and a couple unintentionally irreverent uses of blasphemy like good lord or oh my god. But besides that, it's the inclusion of some violence and drug usage that gives the movie a more adult thematic leaning. In some cases there have been some rougher PG movies when it comes to language or content. A movie like The Blind Side is an eye-opening contrast of those of us who take the littlest things for granted, like even owning our own bed, to those who might not even have a place to call home. It's an encouragement to know that this is based on a true story and a good example of living out the teachings of Christ. The Toy family reached out to the least of these, and it's something we as believers need to put into practice more often. They're not a perfect family by any means, and the film doesn't try to sugarcoat that, but it's an encouragement to put our beliefs into practice more and reach out to those in need. Overall, The Blind Side is a good little film with a positive message, even if it feels a bit overlong at times, which can probably be due in part to its thoughtful pacing, some content, mainly language, some drug use, and a little bit of violence make it unsuitable for younger audiences. But it's a film Christians can take something away from. Christian filmmakers can learn a thing or two from John Lee. Hancock's film, while Hollywood could certainly do so as well. Positive elements. The Blind Side is based on the life of Michael, or a one-time star for Crest Christian School, and now offensive lineman for the Baltimore Ravens. While it can be difficult to separate fact from fiction in these true Tolley tales the rounded by poverty and thuggery through much of his childhood. Michael could have been just a statistic, a life wasted on the mean city streets, had it not been for his gentle disposition when he was a baby. His mother told him to shut his eyes when anything bad was going on before he was allowed to open them. She'd tell him the past is gone, the world is a good place, it's all going to be okay. He's held firm to this odd little fairy tale, shutting his eyes completely to his painful past and allowing himself to accept both the present and future with a certain level of serenity. Is that kind of attitude more accurately defined as denial? Perhaps, but the result is him escaping the anger and bitterness that could have consumed him while Michael struggles in a host of areas. We learn that on an aptitude test, he scored in the 998th percentile in protectiveness. His protective nature naturally makes him an excellent offensive lineman. It's his job to protect the quarterback. And a fantastic addition to the Chewie family. He's got their back through thick and thin. And when Michael and his new brother SJ get in an auto accident, Michael somehow manages to block the passenger side airbag with his forearm, saving the undersized SJ from breaking his face. Leanne is the grit to Michael's gentleness. She manages the Kosove family with a skill and gusto of a high-heeled patent. And when Michael walks into the family's life, she undertakes his betterment as her own personal mission. At first, perhaps she gives Michael a place to stay because she feels she should. But slowly, Michael turns from charity case to family member when a friend of Leanne's tells her how wonderful it is that she's changing. This boy's life. Leanne smiles and says no, he's changing mine the rest of the choy. Lan is no less supportive. Jay becomes buds with Michael almost immediately. The pint-sized mogul in the making becomes Michael's DO agent. When college coaches start calling Collins the Chew's beautiful teen daughter, takes more time to warm to Michael, but eventually forsakes her stuck-up friends to study with him. Sean remains a jovial, paternal presence throughout, and Miss Sue, the tutor hired to help get Michael's grades up to snuff, is both supportive and relentless necessary qualities under the circumstances by virtue of the fact that Michael is elevated, not demeaned by the story. Expressions of racism included on screen are designed to illustrate how ignorant prejudice is. Leanne is troubled, for instance, when her friend asks whether her charity toward Michael is some sort of white guilt thing, and whether she's concerned about having a big black man staying in the house with her teenage daughter. We're meant to roll our eyes. When a relative calls the Chews and asks, "Do you know there's a colored boy in your Christmas card?" Leanne tells a college coach to not take Michael to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre spiritual elements. "You're a fine Christian lady." Michael's biological mother tells Leanne when she hears about all the Choys have been doing for her boy. "Well, I try," Leanne says, and she means it. The real Chais are evangelical Christians, and while their cinematic doppelgangers don't preach or pray much, the family's faith still finds some expression on screen. They do clasp hands and say a prayer before Thanksgiving dinner, and Leanne mentions that she's in a Bible study. We never see her without a silver cross hanging around her neck. These cinematic Chews aren't by any means a perfect family, but they are refreshingly three-dimensional, and we see into their souls just enough to know that faith in Jesus is a prime factor in their best, most generous tendencies. Coach Cotton, the head of Wingate's football program, wants Michael at the school because of his potential on the gridiron. But when he goes to the school's board, he pushes for the boy's admission under a glaze of Christian charity. He points to the word Christian in the school's name and says, "We either take that seriously or we paint over it." Miss Sue confesses that though she's a spiritual woman, she has doubts sexual content in their pajamas, and in bed Shah and Leanne cuddle and kiss before implied sex as Leanne formulates plans on creating a nonprofit. "You knew I was a multitasker when you married me, right?" She says, Michael is one of 13 children, and his biological mother isn't initially sure who fathered him. So it's not especially surprising to hear some folks from Michael's old neighborhood Sniddle suggest that he's messing around with Leanne Collins, or perhaps both. The suggestion of such impropriety sends Michael into a rage. Lean tells SJ to not go into the girls' locker room again, and she's disappointed that a couple of college recruiters took Michael to tea. Bars we don't see him go when the family drops Michael off at college. She warns him that if he gets a girl pregnant, she'll come back to cut his penis off. Menogal cheerleaders, other co-eds, and Leanne, the crude term tap, is thrown around a couple of times. Violent content, defending Lean's and Collins' honor. Michael smashes a couple of thugs into walls and furniture when someone pulls a gun on him. Michael knocks the dude silly. The gun fires harmlessly into the air. Later, Leanne asks one of the thugs whether he's seen Michael when the guy insinuates that he might hurt Michael. Leanne immediately gets in his face. You threaten my son. You threaten me. She scolds him, telling him that she's a member of the National Riflemen's Association, and she's always packing. Michael and SJ get into a pretty bad auto accident, leaving both of them bloodied but not critically injured. A Wingate official tells Michael that a man who fell off a bridge a couple of weeks earlier, we're not sure in the film whether it was an accident, suicide, or murder, though in real life it was ruled homicide, was actually Michael's father. And Michael occasionally flashes back to his violent childhood in cluttered and unfocused images. There's also football, related violence and action. An opposing player kicks Michael in the head, and Michael is called for excessive blocking. When he pushes a would-be tackler through the end zone and over a wall, Miss Sue dissuades Michael from attending the University of Tennessee by telling him that the college keeps all of its corpses is right underneath the football field, where disembodied hands are liable to burst through the turf at any moment and grab at players' ankles. Crude or profane language. Leanne does not approve of swearing. Don't use the A word, she tells her husband, but she didn't edit the screenplay for The Blind Side on screen. We still hear a half dozen times BCNH 4 or 5 times each P once, and DN 2 or 3 times. God's name is misused a handful of times. TT is said a couple of times, the racial slur, and Jer is vocalized once by one of the thugs. Drug and alcohol content. Michael's biological mother, we learn, has had issues with drugs since Michael was a baby, and she'd often tell him to close his eyes when she wanted to use the film, suggests that she still isn't clean. When Leanne asks her if she wants to see her boy, Michael's mom tells her not, like this characters, including Leanne, drink wine. Michael's given a beer by a neighborhood pal. He takes a swig, but doesn't seem to like it much. During a fake phone message, a relative tells the Choys that he's had a bit too much to drink. Other negative elements. Leanne surreptitiously looks up Michael's grades on the principal's computer. She makes a reference to someone getting their panties in a wad, and some football fans hurl insults at Michael. The Chews respond by whispering about the rednecks. Conclusion. Sports movies aren't usually just about sports in many ways. They've become the morality plays of our time, preaching the importance of everything from individual effort to finding family and team you don't need, to know about zone defenses, to appreciate hooers, or be an expert pitcher to enjoy The Rookie the Blind. Side, though, is a sports movie that's not really even about sports. It's a football movie based on the story of a real life and really good football player that often avoids football altogether. Only one game is singled out for special team attention. Michael's first for Wingate. Sure, they win. Tennessee's private school state championship, sure of Michael shown, in classic Rocky style, working feverishly to get into shape and learn the game. But these are ancillary things. This film doesn't feature a single Hail Mary, a solitary goal line stand, or any sort of nail-biting finale. It sidelines all of those things to instead focus on the massive impact people can have in other people's lives. It's not a pristine portrayal either, artistically or ethically, but I was moved by the story and walked out of the theater smiling. Issues of class, race, and family are all enthusiastically grappled with, and the good guys doggedly work their way to the end zone, making a couple of extra points to boot. What you need to know. The Blind Side is a compelling, feel-great drama that tells the true story of Michael, or a homeless young man who is welcomed into a Christian family. Leanne discovers Michael and takes him in, putting him in a private Christian high school as Michael slowly learns to trust Leanne. He joins the football team, and it's a matter of time before he becomes a star player soon. College recruiters are calling The Blind Side is an excellent movie with fine storytelling and great performances. It is a small movie with conflicts that hit home but are not earth-shaking. Even so, the subtle conflict may be the movie's biggest draw. The Blind Side contains a very strong message of Christian faith. It's very clear that Leanne helps Michael because she is a Christian. They pray around the grow table and speak freely about their faith. However, a tutor says that she has doubts about religion. There is some talk concerning sexual relations and male private parts, and there is one scene with a fist fight. But the message of faith is very clear, and the drama is incredibly moving content. Very strong Christian moral worldview with very strong pro-capitalist values where characters pray and take actions to help an older teenager prompted by their Christian faith, including help him achieve and reach college. Plus, minor character expresses doubts about religion to light obscenities, no profanities, two racial slurs, and discussion of male genitalia. Man threatens with gunman, shoves another man close-up of football tackles and car. Accident with some minor bloodstains on shirt, married couple in bed together, kiss, and light discussion of sex in two scenes, including scene where mean thug makes euphemistic sexual insinuations about teenagers, adoptive mother, and sister. No nudity, no alcohol, no smoking, and discussion of drug use by biological mom of main character, who is sent into foster care because of mom's addiction and lying. More detail. The Blind Side is a compelling, feel-great drama that tells the true story of Michael, or a homeless young man who is welcomed into a Christian family. Michael went into foster care because his mom could not care for him because of her drug addiction. Michael, now a senior in high school, ends up literally living on the street with no possessions and no real hope. Leanne, a wealthy mom, discovers Michael and gives him a place to stay for one night. That one night becomes many, and Michael moves in with Leanne and her family. They put Michael in an upscale private Christian high school at first. The school is reluctant to take Michael in because of his poor academic record. However, the coach reminds them that they are a Christian school and need to look out for young men like Michael, or they need to paint over the Christian part of their name. Michael slowly learns to trust Leanne and her family. Embraces him. Michael, who is typically quiet and withdrawn, very slowly begins to open up to them and even starts to smile when Michael's grades improve. He joins the football team, being a very large young man. Michael is given the job of blocking for the quarterback at first. Michael, who's never played football before, is not aggressive enough. In fact, it turns out that the coach was hoping that a boy from the streets would be violent. However, Leanne understands Michael and remembers that he had scored high on protectiveness on a school test. She helps Michael see that protecting the quarterback is like protecting her or protecting the family. This change in perspective turns Michael into a star player as the season progresses. Colleges begin to recruit Michael. Soon he's off to Leanne and her husband's alma mater. But the Anna suddenly is accusing them of conflict of interest. The Blind Side is an excellent, uplifting movie with fine storytelling. It's a small movie with conflicts that hit home but are not earth-shaking. In fact, the subtle conflict is maybe the movie's biggest flaw. Sandra Bullock is convincing as a Southern woman who wants to help others amidst her socialite friends who don't understand why a white wealthy family would take in a homeless black boy. Quinton plays Michael and gives a very subtle performance of a character who speaks very little. The directing in The Blind Side is very sure-footed also. The story never lags and carries profound emotional depth. There is a very strong message of Christian faith in The Blind Side. It's very clear that Leanne helps Michael because she is a Christian and thinks it's the right thing to do. They pray around the table and speak freely about their faith. The biblical admonition to care for orphans is lived out by this family. There is some content that requires discernment. The tutor who is hired to work with Michael says she has doubts about religion later. She lies to convince him to go to a certain school. There is some talk concerning sexual relations and male private parts. There is one scene when Michael returns to his old neighborhood and gets into a fight as well as a car crash, but no one is hurt. All in all, the message of faith and hope in the blind side is very clear, and the drama is terrifically poignant. The fundamental problem with The Blind Side is that it takes Michael Oher's struggle to overcome everything stacked against him, and makes it abundantly clear that the real hero of the story is Leanne Toy, the rich and privileged white woman who took him in. In fact, the sports legend ends up playing a supporting character in his own damn biopic. I don't suggest that the reason for this decision was racist. Leanne is the lead character because she's played by Sandra Bullock, who really wanted an Oscar. So she found a script that was full of all the elements that Oscar voters love: triumph over adversity, disadvantage, people helping one another, and decided to star in it. The movie featured Leanne more prominently because it's Sandra Bullock's Oscar audition tape. That's the reasoning behind it. Nothing more sinister. And yet the movie is very difficult to watch. In order for Bullock to earn her award, she has to be put through the proverbial ringer. She has to show the Oscar voters triumph and tragedy, and Leanne needs to experience both. So while the movie takes the story of Michael Oher's triumph over adversity, it superimposes Leanne's emotional arc over it. This creates an unfortunate sense of dissonance about it. Instead of this being the story of a kid who triumphs against impossible odds over institutional disinterest and neglect, it becomes the story of a rich white woman who took in a black kid. The movie isn't concerned with how difficult it must be for Michael to be in a school that clearly doesn't want him. Even the teachers dismissively call him the big kid. It instead dwells on how difficult it must have been for Leanne to take him in. What is your sudden interest in the projects and of her girlfriend's teases? I'm sure she also faced some institutional pressures in taking care of Michael. But to equate his life experience to hers seems disingenuous at best and ignorant at worst. Lee visits the projects once or twice over the film and portrays the act as one of huge courage and bravery. Perhaps it was. However, the film is rather dismissive of the fact that Michael used to live there every damn day. Indeed, when Michael goes back to the projects and meets his old acquaintances, he handles himself pretty well until they threaten violence against his adoptive family. They can sell his birth mother drugs all they want, but just don't threaten his new Surratt family. Even that scene without Leanne in it centers around her rather than Michael. It isn't about how tough it was to grow up in the projects. It's about what the people in the projects think about Leanne. It doesn't help that the movie is essentially about how the black kids learn to trust his white surrogate family and white team because they won't let him down, unlike his real family or social services, which I couldn't help noticing are presented mostly as black people. The movie panders so hard and is so damn patronizing toward Michael that it's hard to stomach at times. We're told he is brave kid for wanting a quality education, basically for daring to show up at school in the first place. This seems to suggest that pretty much all disadvantaged people are quite happy to stay that way and don't want crazy things like education or a better standard of living. The movie is so damn condescending that it turns Michael simply showing up to a proper school into an act of heroism, ignoring the very really institutional prejudices and pressures which weigh against kids from his background. Indeed, once Michael shows up to school, he clearly has no real interest in engaging it. It takes the hard work of the white staff to get him to learn. The movie makes it repeatedly clear that he's not dumb, but he just doesn't want to be there. It almost turns his inability to engage into a hurdle to be overcome by the white cast members, as if he simply can't be bothered. It's the same troubling portrayal of the disenfranchised and disaffected that we saw in Precious, where it was made abundantly clear that people from that background won't necessarily choose to be helped. On the other hand, the movie glamorizes the wholesomeness of upper-class living. The Toy family consciously put on a show for Michael, pretending to be a family that always dines together. "Why are we eating in here?" the young kid asks as they eat in a huge dining room that they never use. They are attempting to sell Michael a middle American life, which doesn't actually exist. It just plays up the wholesomeness of the family, creating the impression that they're trying to appear better than they actually are. Indeed, the movie seems surprisingly okay with the middle class. Prejudices of the Tahi family when the family are taking the photo for their Christmas card. Leanne decides to include Michael in a shot, who has been living there for months, remarking, "It's not like I'm going to put it on the Christmas card." Of course, she does use it on the Christmas card, but it makes me wondering what the underlying assumption was. Why wouldn't they use it on the Christmas card he does after all? Live. There, even if he's not formally adopted until later. Hell, why was Michael left out in the first place? The film treats it as a mark of Leanne's tolerance and Maggie that she eventually includes Michael, but it makes the audience wonder why he was excluded in the first place. The Blind Side is actually a decently made film. Sandra Bullock is good in it. I wish I could make a comment about Quinton Aaron, who plays Ower, but the script really doesn't give him enough to work with. He's very much a tangential and supporting character. The plot itself is straightforward and predictable. It hits the notes that it needs to and flows smoothly enough, but it never stops, feeling more than just a little bit manipulative. I probably suffer a bit since I know nothing of American football, so I don't appreciate the context of the film or the game that it's playing. That said, I'm not sure I'd get too much more out of it. Great movies have been made about the sport, which I can jump into with no real knowledge. So I get the sense that this isn't the real barrier. I should also take the time to observe that none of my criticisms are in any way rendered moot, since it's based on a true story. I have no doubts that the real lead and Toy did a great thing, and that the real Michael Oher might have been very quiet to the point of being timid. It's how the film illustrates these facts which creates the problem, not the facts themselves. It's a trit film, pretty much exactly what you're getting by glancing at the poster. It's your standard feel-good Oscar buzz, but applied in the most awkward and poorly thought-out manner possible. It should be the story of Michael Oher, but instead, he's rendered a passenger in the story of how difficult it is to be an upper-class white woman who takes a young black man into her home. It just feels like the movie is entirely missing the point and focusing on the wrong parts of the story. This film, directed by John Lee Hancock, a screenplay by John Lee Hancock based on The Blind Side Evolution of a Game by Michael Lewis, produced by Broderick Johnson. Andrew Cove-Gillen, starring Sandra Bullock, Tim McGraw, Quinton Aaron, Kathy Bates, cinematography, Al Cavillo, edited by Mark Lally, music by Carter Burwell, production company, Allen Entertainment, distributed by Warner Bros. Pictures. Release date November 20th, 2009. Running time 126 minutes. Country United States. Language English. Budget $129 million. Box office $392 million. So guys, this is the review of The Blind Side movie and some information about it. How do you like our today's video? Please let us know by commenting, and if you like this video, please like it.